Okay, guys, thank you so much for joining us this evening. I see we have a bunch of the coaches on. First, a note to them, because I'm going to be pulling up the pre-race day questionnaire, I can't actually see anyone's faces to say, I want to say anything. So if you do want to contribute, which I want you guys to, will you just type it in the chat? And then for everyone else, if you are new to this call, what we do is we just take 30 minutes and every week we talk on a different topic. And for tonight, we decided to just talk about that pre-race questionnaire. Why it's so important for you guys to fill that out, send it to your coach, review it prior to race day so you can avoid mistakes. And then what are the most kind of common mistakes we see happening with athletes when they start to fill that out, or we're seeing at race day. So help you kind of fill out that questionnaire. And then you guys saw that we sent out a post-race questionnaire. Definitely save that. Basically, when you open up that link, you can copy it and save it to yourself, and then you can fill it out online. I highly recommend maybe giving the race a day or two and then filling that out for your coach, and then being proactive in setting up a time with your coach so you can go over that post-race questionnaire. But something I like to do with my athletes is we actually go through the files. And so getting on a Zoom call versus just a phone call and actually looking at the data points from your race files to really help and guide you for your next race that you're going to do, and then learn as much as you can from that prior race. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull out the questionnaire, and then we're just going to kind of go over it step by step here. Sorry, Mom. Okay, bye. And then for anyone who's new, what we also do is if you have any questions, just type it in the chat, and then we'll get to every single one of your questions. So we have this race day checklist. All of you have this. If you do not have this, please email me and I will send it out to you. Especially if you're new to the sport, I would recommend you reviewing it right when you get it and not race week. Surprisingly, that still happens every time. And then if you're not new to this, you should be getting this race day checklist out now. For most races, we're tapering 2 weeks before the race. We call it a deload, and then we call it a sharpen, and then a taper. And so in deload, when the training is really light, use that extra time you have to go over this and start laying out everything you need for race day. We've shared, there's so many of you new, so sorry if you have to hear this again, but what I've personally done in the past is I have done big Ziploc bags for all of my gear. So I have a fueling Ziploc bag and I label it, and then I have a swim bag, a bike bag, and a run bag. And so when it's time to lay out your stuff for race day, it's already done for you, and you pack it like that. And then when you get there, it just takes away a lot of that like pre-race anxiety, knowing you have everything. And so I'm just going to check what message we have here. Okay, it's an AI assistant. Okay, so race morning. Again, I would recommend you trying on your kit now, making sure it's still fitting for you. And then also when you're going to a race, pack for all the weather conditions. Too many times we've gone to a race, especially one with Florida, with a lot of you guys doing it, and it all of a sudden gets really cold. And now everyone's running around town trying to get toe warmers and arm sleeves, etc. So I would just say, go ahead and pack cold weather gear anytime you're doing a race of this at this time of the year, just in case you need it. The extra thing on a race morning that I recommend you all have is a second pair of running shoes. You want to be walking around in running shoes the entire morning, right until you have to pretty much walk towards the beach or the swim start, versus we've seen flip-flops, we've seen barefoot. And you can just imagine if you're walking from your car in flip-flops down to the race, sometimes it's a mile long. I mean, that's a lot of added stress on your feet, and it really does make a difference. So have a second pair of shoes. And then also, if you wanted to do a slight warm-up jog, etc., that is necessary. Even for these Ironman races, if it's super cold water, it really does make a difference to do a slight little jog. Then you can do some mobility to help the body be ready for the race, and you need a pair of running shoes in order to do that. The other thing, and this is a trick that I do, so on race morning, you have for an Ironman, so you have all your morning clothes bag, you have your bike and run bags that you hand off the day before, and we can go over that again later, and then your special needs bags. In the morning, when I'm carrying my morning clothes bag for an Ironman, that's where my swim gear stuff is in, and all I do is a swap. So when you take off your jacket and your pants and stuff, that goes into the morning clothes bag, which you drop off before the swim start. And then I take out what I need for the swim. So I'm not sure I'm pretty sure most of you guys do that. So, okay. race morning, I think most of you know that when you drop off your bike the day before, you're not putting your fuel on the bike. You do that on race morning. So you do need to have a separate bag with all your fuel and everything that you're going to add to your bike. That's bike computer, bike shoes, etc. as well. Don't leave it on your bike overnight. And then also, you can take a pump, but I recommend not taking a pump because there are plenty of pumps in transition on race day. And the first thing I always do when I get to the race in the morning is I go and I pump up my tires and get that out the way. And then I come back and then immediately start placing all the fuel on my bike. A big mistake I see athletes make prior to race day is they don't know how they're going to carry their fuel, and they're only thinking about that race day and realizing that they need extra space in their bento box, or they're like, oh, I need an extra bottle, how am I going to do this? And so think about your hydration setup right now as far as how you're going to take fuel versus what you're going to take from the course, and then practice with that, even if it's these last few weeks. And then, as we said over here, chafe cream, put it everywhere, especially if you're wearing our kits. I'm like, anytime there's like a seam on the kit or a zipper, like mark those body parts, use chafe cream on those body parts, because you have a tendency to chafe in those areas, not just around the neck, not just around the leg, but anytime there's extra seams or zippers. And then sunscreen, of course. Goggles, I mean, I feel like you can read it here, you can go over the questionnaire, but I always say have 2 pairs of goggles. You don't want one pair to break. You also want to make sure that your goggles are fog free. 2 ways to do that is you can get a new pair of goggles, then you know for sure for the most part, and make sure it fits. So wear it once or twice before race day, so you're not going to have any leaks. Or make sure you clean your goggles, and we can clean. There's tons of goggle preventing fog solution out there, or baby shampoo. And why baby shampoo is if it does get in your eyes, it doesn't sting as much as other soaps and shampoos. However, know that the hand soap in the restroom does work in getting the muck off your goggles so that they don't fog. So you should never have an issue with goggle fogging, because it's completely preventable through the different solutions that are out there, or getting a new pair of goggles. If it is really cold, I think some folks on this call are doing Ironman Arizona. We wear 2 swim caps just to keep your head warm. And so always take an extra swim cap with you to the race, where if you need that extra head warmth, you put your own swim cap on, and then you put the race swim cap over. And then make sure you cover your ears, because the reason your head gets so cold is water gets in your ears. So covering your ears, and then you should be good to go. And then also be very aware of wetsuit or swim skin, the water temperature, and what you're going to be using. And if it's on the cusp, always take both. Be ready for both. For those who don't know what a swim skin is, it's basically a cover over your tri-suit that's going to make you more hydrodynamic. It's the water just wicks off the suit, and it does definitely save in some time cutting through the water versus the drag that is created from your tri-suit. And it's not buoyant though, so just know that. And then do know for the beginners, if it is not wetsuit legal, but you still want to wear your wetsuit, you can do so. You just have to start in the very back, and you can't get awards. That's just the general rule. So a lot of people still actually wear their wetsuit if they just want to get the job done for the day. I'm going to check the chat. Yeah, Rob, thank you. I use Foggy's Weiss and they work perfect. Yep. There's a great product. Coaches, does anyone want to say anything? A reminder just to go into the chat and go in and say something, and you can help me. I'm sure it will come to you. The bike, again, make sure everything is ready to go. Too many times we've actually seen athletes, the biggest issue is that they forget to charge their Di2. So go ahead, even if your Di2, the electric shifting is charged up, charge it the week of the race. Another thing is you want to check your tires. So there is such a thing as race tires and regular tires. Race tires definitely are faster, can honestly save you a lot of time, and make sure that there are no cuts in them. If you're using your regular tires, still go ahead and check them. And because we've seen really bad conditions on race day with certain tires, and you're just risking the chance of flattening, etc. But if it's my 2 cents, you've invested so much time, so much money to prepare, go ahead and buy some race tires, which are going to allow you to go faster, which in turn allows you to run better because you're off the bike a lot sooner. And then decide, I'm just going kind of through this list over here, you guys. Race wheels, obviously you would have bought some, you would have rented some. If you decide to go that route, know that they rent at races, or definitely ask around from your local community. Sometimes you get a lot of luck there, or at a bike shop. And I think everything else on this is really self-explanatory. Tire change kit. Make sure you know how to change a tire, front wheel and back wheel, and practice it prior to race day, because the reality is the person, they do have support out there, but by the time they get to you, it could take a really long time. So you need to be able to be self-sufficient. One of the big things on the bike that we always tell people, it's right over here, is always carry extra salt. I can't tell you how many times we've been at races and someone is cramping or something has happened and they don't have salt because they dropped it out on the course. And I always say have more than enough and have some in special needs, so that that is never an issue with you, and just put that in your bento box so you can carry it in your bra. Checking the chat. Jules, go ahead.
Cool. I have said this a lot before, but I know there's a lot of new people. It's something that I've ran into before and have had athletes run into as well. If you are traveling to a race via like plane, make sure if you have 2 suitcases that the one that you check, your checked bag, is full of things that you don't really care about or can be easily replaced. And then your carry-on be important things like your tri kit, your bike shoes, your helmet, things that you don't want to get lost. I've had a situation where I've flown to a race and my luggage has gotten lost, and luckily I used this trick, and it was a bunch of just clothes that I could go buy at Target. And I've had it happen to an athlete as well. So especially if you're traveling to Florida, just taking the pressure off of that, putting things that are not important in your check bag, and then those important things in your carry-on bag.
Perfect. Thanks, Jules. I appreciate it. Guys, before I go over the run, coaches, know that we're going to go through this checklist. So I'll be asking any of you if you commonly see certain mistakes being made by athletes and want to chime in for that. Okay, going on to the run, guys, a couple heads up on things. Make sure you're adding your speed laces to your shoes well ahead of time to check that they fit your foot properly. We've had issues where athletes have put their speed laces on too tight and it actually bruises the top of their foot, and they have that issue during race day. So just put it on ahead of time, practice them on your race shoes, and that will save you a lot. Same thing with the socks. Some people have chafing on their socks because maybe they haven't practiced with them. So just everything you're using, make sure you've tried it in your long workouts ahead of time. You guys obviously know a race belt that is needed, hat, sunglasses, personal nutrition. Decide if you're going to carry your handheld or not. That is something we always talk about with most of our athletes on that pre-race call. And then again, just taking some extra things you can't get out there on race day. Outside of this, on the salt, I know some people will take like an anti-inflammatory just in case they get off their bike and their back is really hurting, especially a course like Florida. You're in aero position the whole time. And you're getting off and running and you're like, wow, my back hurts, everything's seizing up. And sometimes something like that can help you. As long as you're staying hydrated, you should be good. And then, yeah, some extras, as you can see, making sure you have some things to change into after the race, a drink, etc., if needed, especially if you're racing again. I feel like that's extremely important. Just checking. And remember, your feet swell through the race. Okay, Alice, do you want to talk about that quickly and the importance of your size of your shoe?
Yeah, I was just mostly saying for the lock laces, oftentimes people just do like a short 3-mile run in them maybe before to make sure they feel good, and they don't realize that there is a chance that their feet swell. And that said, I mean, hopefully you guys have done all your long training runs, but do remember that your feet can swell throughout a race, particularly long races. So I personally, obviously have practiced it. I go half a size up with all of my race shoes.
Such valuable information. Yeah, I will definitely, I've had an experience exactly what she talked about, and I will always go half a size up on my race shoes because of that exact reason of your feet swelling up and then loosening up the laces. So that's perfect. Okay, guys, honestly, the whole day before the race, it's all about just laying out the times. It's just going to ease the anxiety leading into the race. But the biggest thing is just making sure you are prioritizing the fueling. Obviously you're wanting to carb load, and that starts with your breakfast and your post-race breakfast, and then you kind of taper off on the meal so you don't go to sleep just really full the night before the race. So we're having a really good plan about how you're going to eat, when you're going to eat, having those meals be early, when you're going to drop off your things. They used to do a thing where you had to pick a time where you dropped off your gear bag and bike. And now that's really not the case anymore. It's whenever you want to. And so what I tell athletes, it's whatever is most convenient for you. Some people like to drop off their things as early as possible, and then they're done. They go back to the hotel, they're resting. They don't have to worry about it anymore. But some like to go out at about 4 o'clock because it makes them move around a little bit and they feel better because of it. So kind of think about what's going to best set you up for success the day before, and know it could take some time. You know, by the time you've parked and walked your bike and dropped the bike and everything, it will take a while. And then also when you are dropping off your bike and your run gear bags and your bike the day before, walk the transitions, know exactly where you have to go to get your bag. How do you go through the tent? Where do you get your bike? So you don't have to kind of look the morning of the race. Again, it's everything to ease anxiety, to know exactly what the steps are for race day. Anything to add here? Any of the coaches on the pre-race day guidance? No. Okay. Okay, race day, guys, you need to be very specific here when you're writing out everything. Obviously take into account everything you need to do. I know for myself and a lot of others, like we're rolling out, we're doing some mobility in the hotel room. And so take that up into account for your wake up time, your breakfast, like lay out for your coach exactly what you're eating, how many carbs it's going to be, your electrolytes, what are the source, how many milligrams of electrolytes, and we can guide you accordingly. And then I always say get to transition with enough time to be able to drop off all your things, be able to go to the restroom again if you need to. Rather be there early than rushing, especially in an Ironman, because I feel like there's so many things to kind of finally do to make you feel comfortable in getting ready. Reminder to pump up your tires on race morning should be the first thing that you're doing, not just the night before. Make sure the nutrition is on your bike. Another thing I do on race morning is I go through my tires. So like I'll spin my wheels, make sure the brakes aren't rubbing, just in case something maybe hit the bike overnight. I'll even turn the pedals over. If I have a power meter on, I'm turning that on. I'm turning the pedals over, making sure the power meter is connected, making sure my heart rate is connected. You just want all your stuff to work. So check that and make time for that on race morning. And then, everything we talk about, you know, Ironman, it's like, what can you control? And that's mostly everything. And so it's like, if you can be very, very exact about your nutrition, how much you're going to drink, where is it going to come from? This is what this is all about. Again, once you have that very exact plan, it's all about honestly checking the boxes on race day. And then throughout the race, it's like you have 4 or 5 things to focus on, and you're continuously like rotating through your mind. I've got to get this fuel and hydration. This is my cadence. This is my power. This is my heart rate. And that's basically what we're going through on this pre-race checklist with you guys. Make sure you know those numbers. Okay. Yeah, know what kind of mobility and jog and stuff you need to do. Again, the longer the race, the less that is necessary, but I do feel like something is better than nothing in helping the body be ready for what it's about to do, especially when you're running into the ocean like Florida. A little bit of a jog, a little bit of mobility is key. And then the shorter the race, the longer the warm-up. The hotter the race, it might be a little bit less, so you're not overly sweating and overly exhausted before race day. All these things we can guide you on specifically for your race. And then all the way up to what do you need to take right before, how far out. For example, your final fuel, you want to be taking about 15 minutes before you get in the water. What are you holding on your hand? Are you carrying water with you? Are you carrying electrolytes? Again, all things to prepare ahead of time. At what time do you want to go down to the swim start? Something that catches a lot of people off guard is people are lining up in the chute well before the start of their race. So just say the race is starting at 7, you will see the front pack lining up ready to go at 6:30. So if you're not prepared for that, you get to that chute and you're late. And now you have to work your way all the way through people. So that's something to be aware of. Let me check on the questions here. Maddie wrote, would love some examples, thank you, of some eat for lunch the day before. That's perfect. Alice wrote, so Maddie asked, what are people eating for lunch the day before? And then Alice wrote, stick to something you know is going to settle well. I personally always have the same thing for lunch and dinner. I do as well. Rice, sweet potato, and eggs. Some people do plain chicken. Yeah, so exactly what Alice said. I buy a big lunch and I eat most of it for lunch and the rest of it for dinner. And for me, it's always sweet potato, rice. I do a small steak personally, and then the rest of it I eat in the evening. And as Alice does, like a lot of people will do just chicken, simple protein, some eggs. Stay away from fiber at that point. Stay away from fat. You wanting the most of your calories to come from carbohydrate, and then of course supplement with protein. And those should be the two main macros that you're eating the day before the race. And I would almost say the 2 days before the race. Okay. Guys, all of these swim questions, I'm not going to go over them, but you need to go over them and start practicing that these next 2 weeks into the race. Again, we have Florida coming up. You need to know, what is my pacing strategy? Am I going to go out hard? Am I going to go out easy? What is my focal point going to be that keeps my stroke together, keeps me calm? What do I do if I panic? Practice all of that in training. Like I will do race pace 50s or race pace 100s, and immediately in my mind, I'm thinking I'm starting the race, or what am I going to feel during the race? And the more and more you do that, the less nervous you get race day. You just default into what you've been doing in training. Okay. It's all about the mind here. That's why we asked, what does success looking like in the swim? And for me, my example was, if I could stay mentally focused throughout the swim on what I was doing and that point, and I would really focus in on what I was feeling in my body or wanted to feel while I was swimming. And if I could do that and not have my mind wander, I knew the success would be a good result. So the success in the swim is not a sub 1 hour swim or a result. It's something that you do that will set you up for success. That is the question. Okay. Yeah. And then over here, all self-explanatory. Again, the biggest things is what are you taking with you? What are you taking from the course? And if you are having to supplement from the course, you need to know what are in those bottles. So Gatorade Endurance, Morning Gels. Note that there's a probably pretty high chance you're going to drop a bottle, and then you're going to have to supplement with what's on course. And so I would say make sure you're practicing with that prior to race day, and or at the very least, if you have not, know what you're taking in, so it's an easy replacement for what you should have done. Yeah, preferred race cadence, heart rate range to stay in, your power goals if you have a power meter. Again, talk to your coach about that. It should be very obvious, honestly, based on the training you've done up to this point, because you've done tons of race pace repeats to where you're dialing in and should know exactly where you are most efficient and what is something that you can sustain. The biggest mistake we get when people answer this is, how will my power change uphill into a headwind? And the answer is your power is going to go up slightly in those instances. And then if you have a downhill and a tailwind, your power is going to go down. And so too many times we actually see athletes trying to hold on to their power with a downhill and tailwind, when at that moment, it actually doesn't matter. It's all about efficiency and speed at that point. I'm going to go to the chat just because we have some questions. Jules, do you want to, let's see here. Okay, you're just speaking to the...
Yeah, I was just chiming in on the fueling question.
I have one more thing to add on this.
Please. Yeah.
Okay. A lot of these, which are awesome, are asking about your goals. And I can't stress enough, like obviously having time goals is fun and pace goals is fun, but really try to come up with some other attainable goals that you can focus on throughout the race. So like on the bike, my goal is to absolutely nail my nutrition, or on the run, my goal is to keep my cadence at blank, or those sort of goals, because like Natasha was saying, in the swim, they keep you really motivated and focused and present in your race, instead of just saying like, I really want to do like a 5:30 bike, or I really want to hit this pace. Because if you're not hitting that pace, you don't want to get down on yourself. So have like other attainable goals on there that you can put on this checklist and then resort back to during the race. Perfect.
Thank you. Yeah, guys, I'll just speak to one more thing here, and then coaches, anyone just chime in if there's something you want to say, please. I will just say here, at this part, you can see me circle it, is what is out of your control and how are you going to overcome it? a race like a 70.3 and Ironman, something is going to go wrong at some point in the race. And it may be as small as losing focus. And so you needing to write this down and just have like a go-to. If this goes wrong, I'm going to do this. If this happens, I'm going to do that. Because too many times something goes wrong and someone panics and you're just kind of stressing out about it instead of just taking action right away and saying, hey, I can overcome it, because an Ironman is a long day. There's honestly nothing on this list here. Sick to your stomach, cramping. You can overcome it all. You just have to have a plan in place and go to it right away, instead of like, you know, just getting down on yourself for 20 minutes and then figuring out, oh, now I can fix it. Okay. So this is honestly the key to Ironman success right here. We have a chat. Yes. So Rob asked, I don't have enough room in my bento box for gels. Do you tape them on the bike, stuff them in your kit? Any other idea? And so Coach Alice said you can use special needs to put some of them in if you are going to stop at special needs halfway through the race. But I would opt for putting them in the pockets of your kit before taping it on your bike, which is funny because that used to be a thing. If you would go to a race, it would be like the gel after gel taped across the top tube, and it makes your bike so unaerodynamic that ideally you want to fall away. You don't want to do that. But I will say, even for myself, at times I have taped 1 or 2 gels on the frame in the past. I just make sure to take those first, and then it's off my frame and less aerodynamic. And if you don't care about aerodynamics and you just need to be on your bike, then that is an option. Taping it on your bike, and tape it in a way that it's over the flap. So when you just tear the gel off, it opens the gel, you're ready to eat it. And then for ladies, I stick it in my bra as well. Okay. And this is the end of it, you guys. And so I will say this on an Ironman 70.3, if you can nail everything on the bike, you are set up for the run. And so while you can have a pace, while you can have a nutrition plan on the run, you can actually be a little looser based on how you feel. And I think a lot of people do race that way, where you're kind of going aid station to aid station, and you have a plan. Obviously, if it's a really hot day, the plan in your head is like, I need to grab as many cups of water and Gatorade as I can through every single aid station, or I have to stay on top of my salt and be taking it X, Y, and Z. But for the most part, you know, I like to say, you know, you can be a little bit looser with when you take that gel, if you feel you need to be, based on how your stomach is doing, how your energy is doing. Just don't get behind. You know, as soon as you get in a situation where you're like, nothing sounds good, well, you're behind. And then at that point, like if you were planning to take a gel, which just sounds gross at the time, do know you can still get calories in from Coke, from Gatorade, but do know that once you resort to Coke, there's no sodium in that. So you need to supplement with sodium elsewhere if you were taking sodium prior to that. So that's another big mistake that I see happen, is they're getting their calories from Coke, but they're not supplementing with sodium. Okay, coaches, does anyone else want to add in on these questionnaires as far as guidance for these athletes? And then athletes, do you have any questions?
I can chime in on something for the bike. 2 things that kind of go with under fueling. I also see a lot of athletes under fuel because they forget during the bike to fuel because they get so focused. So a tip that I tell a lot of my athletes is like that 5 mile, it's usually broken down every like 5 miles. Once you see that 5 mile marker, that should be a cue of like, okay, I'm going to be taking in a gel right now. I'm going to be going down for electrolytes or waters, or just when your watch laps and having that beep. But just trying to keep, you know, if you and your coach came up with a goal of like, hey, every 20 minutes, take a gel, just try to be mindful and keep a watch on that, because it's really easy to just get too focused and forget. But I always like tell athletes, just go, once you see mile 5, mile 10, there's really big signs, fuel off of that. And then another thing with the under fueling is I see athletes, a common mistake is they'll feel really good and be like, I don't need to take a gel in right now. I feel good. I always say you have to be thinking about your future self, on like, make sure even though you feel really good right now, knowing that if you don't take this gel like you planned, maybe in 45 minutes, you're not going to feel so good. So even if you're feeling good, that's a really good sign. Make sure you keep feeling good and keep fueling. So those are my 2 things.
Yeah, guys, it honestly it sounds so simple, but it's honestly the biggest thing we see happen is that people just get behind because they forget. And instead of, again, your mind should only be on these things, and you are going to have a successful day if you continuously remind yourself of all these things instead of your mind wandering. Guys, one thing I wanted to share. So I pulled up my Garmin. What I like to look at on my Garmin when I am racing is what I'm doing in that moment. I don't even look at the entire day, but that moment. So what does that look like? When I'm running, at the top, I always like to look at heart rate, because heart rate is what guides my pacing. I don't even really look at pace. It's kind of secondary. And then after that, I have lap distance. So that means it's going to lap every mile. So I know I'm like at 0.5 of the mile, and then lap time, and then lap pace. And so I can see in that mile, I am holding a 7:15 pace, not my overall average, not anything else. And that just keeps me very present. And so when I'm racing, I'm like, I'm going to run the best mile I can within the right heart rate. And then I know when I'm close to it. And as soon as I hit that mile marker, it's a reset. It's a restart for that next mile. And for me, that really helps mentally. And the same in the bike. I have my athletes lap every 5 miles. And so if you have a power goal, because it's going to shift through the day. So an example, when I was racing for an Ironman, for the first 5 to 10 miles, I would say 5 miles, I would have the goal is just getting my heart rate down, because your heart rate is at its highest point coming out of the water. And so I'm not trying to hit my Ironman power right out the gate. I'm actually focused more on getting my heart rate down and getting in control. And so if my goal for Ironman power was 200, the first 5 miles was maybe only like 180 to 190. I would get it under control, and then my heart rate would beep, and I'd be in a new mile, and I'd see my normalized power lap. So just for that next 5 mile segment. And now I'm like, okay, I'm hitting 200. I'm hitting 200, based on, of course, the terrain. Florida, it's flat. So it's just consistent throughout. But I do find if you're just looking at normalized power for the entire day, now you're trying to chase numbers. And so if you started slow and now you're trying to get it to 200, which is your goal, you're just typically over biking. And then if you do have a bad segment where you ran out of fuel, you lost focus, you can say, you know what, that segment is behind me. I'm going to now focus on the next thing. A couple things we do see happen in an Ironman is your heart rate. If it's going down what you know you're capable of holding, you are either running out of fuel or you're losing focus. It's as simple as that. If it's too high, you're dehydrated or you're over biking. And that's the same in the run. What is going to happen with every single one of you is you think in the marathon, it's going to be about controlling the heart rate. And that is not the case, because it's such a long day. And because you're running out of fuel and you are tired, your heart rate is going to drop throughout the marathon. And your goal is to keep it up. So just say your goal marathon heart rate is 150. If you can hold 150 throughout the day, and if by chance even go up at the end, you like absolutely nailed the day. And the reality is that's not going to happen, because you're starting to slow down, you're running out of energy, and your goal is just don't let it drop off too much. Maybe you started at 150 and now you're ending at 145. Well, guess what? That is an incredible day that you just had. And so everyone after their Ironman Florida, if you're on this, I want you to go and look at that. And that's only the case for an Ironman. That's not the case for a 70.3. That is short enough to where you can still push that heart rate up. And we see typically, athletes finish strong and their heart rate might be a threshold at the end, whereas maybe it was 90% of max heart rate, kind of built throughout the half marathon, and it's finishing really strong at the end of the day. Okay. I've got 3 more questions here, and any coaches, if you want to jump in. It says, Julie, share the water bottle tip you told me during the run. Coach Jules, did you have a water bottle tip, Coach Jules?
Yeah, I told Dottie, and this is something that I do during training, is I'll carry a water bottle with me full of my electrolytes. I just do all the scoops that I need, just to make sure that I'm not running out of sodium. And I know Dottie did that for her race at Waco, and it was pretty successful, just having all of your electrolytes or your carb sources on hand with you, and just going through each aid station and taking in water, essentially. I know that's worked out for a lot of athletes. So I think that's the tip she was referring to.
Perfect. Okay, good. Yeah. And we have some other just folks that just said that they have their Garmin beep every time. And that was a reminder for them to fuel on the bike. And then Charlie confirmed that he said a classic bonk is if your heart rate is actually dropping. That's not a good thing. You want your heart rate to stay stable. Okay, you guys don't have any other questions, so we'll call that a day. Next Sunday will be in a very important call, even though it's premature for some of you all, but we're going to be talking about off-season. And so the next few weeks of calls, we're going to talk about how to maximize your off-season. What are things that you can be doing to set yourself up for 2024, in knowing that the off-season is really a great indicator of success for 2024, because it's this uninterrupted time to train. And we see our biggest gains in that period when we're not focused on race pace, when we're not focused on volume. Those things really just prepare you for race day. They don't actually move the needle forwards. Okay, so guys, you have a good week, and Florida athletes, we'll be seeing you soon. And yeah, good to see all the new faces on the call. Bye.